Hey, what's up everybody, and welcome back to Drums and Drams. My name is Cameron, and today we have another episode of Quick Sips. On today's episode, I'm going to be taking a look at a very special rye whiskey that absolutely shook up the whiskey world in 2020. This is the Jack Daniel's Single Barrel Proof Rye. Now, this is a bottle that I didn't actually get my hands on when it came out, and at this point, I'm not willing to pay the $300 secondary price tag that this thing is commanding, so I'm relegated to trying a sample, making a quick sip episode about it, and then going about my merry way wishing I had one of these things. Yes, I've heard all of the hype from my friends in the Whiskey Tube community, from people locally here in Ohio. I know this thing is highly, highly regarded. My first few sips of this, I mean, there's no getting around the fact that this is just a freaking awesome whiskey. So you already know how this review is going to go, but I want to do it nonetheless. I want to get a video out for this thing so I can put it to bed and enjoy the rest of my sample that I have. So with that said, thank you to Yung-Pei Chang for sending in this sample of the Jack Daniel's Single Barrel Proof Rye. It's awesome to have people sending samples of this quality, and Yung-Pei Chang has sent me some really incredible stuff. So thank you. Very excited about this review. What I'm going to do is taste this whiskey first, then put it next to the bourbon version of this, or I guess I should say Tennessee whiskey, the Jack Daniel's Single Barrel Proof, and then just kind of see how they differ. That'll be a really quick comparison here. At the end, I'll keep this as quick as possible. Last thing I'll say, the mash bill here is 70% rye, 18% corn, 12% malted barley. And the proof of this particular sample, 133.2 proof. All right, so I think that's all we really need to know about this thing. Let's go ahead and get into this review. Gosh, I wish I had one of these bottles. Okay, so when you first nose this thing, it's actually, to me, it's kind of unimpressive for whatever reason. And I've tasted this a few times. I had an entire other sample bottle full of this. I had 4 ounces. And it's not that impressive up front, and I don't know why. So like at the beginning here, I get toasted cornbread. I get kind of like, it almost reminds me of just the regular old stuff, the Single Barrel Proof. And it's like, oh, I don't know why this is so special. But then when you nose it again, you start to get all of the dark fruits, and you start to understand why this is that special. So I don't know if I'm just crazy or if my nose is broken, but again, at the very beginning, I just get sort of this toasted cornbread note, and then some regular sort of bourbon-y type notes that I get on the other bottle. But now I get the dark fruits. You start to really get into that beautiful rye spice. There's a great amount of this just thick molasses going on in here, a ton of dark fruit. There might even be a little bit of chocolate in here. And there's just this brightness to it from the rye spice that is incredible. It doesn't get too minty, too piney. It doesn't get too dilly. Like there are none of the extremes that we know from a lot of rye whiskeys, Willet 4-year, a lot of young MGP 95.5 ryes. We don't get that here. This almost reminds me of a barely legal rye, even though it's 70%. It just is so balanced. It's so rounded out and just well integrated, well constructed. Yeah, just incredible. And I also get a lot of vanilla on this. So vanilla, dark fruit, toasted cornbread, a beautiful amount of rye, very thick sweet molasses, possibly a chocolate note, a little bit of maple. What more can you ask for, you know? And of course the Jack Daniel's banana note, very slightly in there, but not off-putting whatsoever. So let's do this on the palate. Let's see what we get here. Jesus. That thing, when it hits your palate, it just grips you. And it takes you on a ride from the minute that it hits your tongue. That is hilarious and crazy. You can see my eyes are watering. Like half of that is crying and half of that is the intensity of the pour. They're good tears. They're happy tears. This thing is so freaking good. It is drying in the mouth, but also mouth watering. I mean, it just sucks all the moisture out of your mouth because it's so freaking intense. You know, the dark fruitiness is really the most apparent thing for me. You don't tend to get that on the bourbon. We'll do that comparison in a second, but it's just so much rich, dark fruit going on in here, like dried plums, dried blackberries, dried figs, all of that kind of thing. The spice, again, so well integrated. The banana is a little more present, that bananas foster note on the palate than it is the nose. The vanilla is sort of in the background. You just can't beat it. And the finish, obviously, with something like this is just so incredibly long. Before we do this comparison, I just want to say that this could be one of the most intense but balanced and just complete and exciting whiskeys that I've had maybe ever. I mean, when you smell this thing, especially after you take a sip and you open up your palate and your olfactory system and all that to these dark fruits, when you go back to the nose here, it's incredible. So it really rivals BTAC stuff for me. I didn't want to like it this much because the secondary price shot up so high. Now I'm kind of pissed that I didn't buy in at 200 because now it's at 300, and I'll probably try to find one of these bottles. God forbid. But it's just spectacular. So let's compare it to the bourbon now. Tennessee whiskey. I'm sorry. I'm used to saying bourbon. Let's do this comparison really quick, and then we'll wrap this video up. Yeah, here it's a lot lighter on the nose. It's not as deep and rich. More banana on the nose of this one. More maple. Less of the really dense fruit. Less of the dense molasses type notes. Yeah, it just seems a little more basic. There might be more oak actually on this than the rye. And basic is not a good word because this is still such an amazing pour. But the rye makes it look silly. So let's try this on the palate now. Yeah, definitely more caramel driven, more barrel char, maple, more of that, less of the fruitiness. It's still so good though. I mean, it doesn't quite grip your palate the same way that this rye does. I think there's a 2% differential here between these two pours that I have, being both single barrels. But yeah, I mean, the bourbon Tennessee whiskey is incredible. Don't get me wrong. But the rye is just on a completely different level. Yeah, and as I come back here, I don't know. I don't have anything else to say. I mean, that's it. That's the video, right? I'm gonna have another sip of this. What the heck, man? All right. That is some damn good whiskey. Period. End of story. If you don't have a bottle of this, if they do another release, which I think is a possibility, I've heard that they might make this an annual release, you have to get one of these things. You have to. And Old Forester's coming out with a barrel proof rye now. Not sure when that's going to hit shelves or anything, but I saw the label that had been filed. So I'm curious about that. I'm hoping that's going to be in the same ballpark as this thing. But holy crap, guys. This is a stellar whiskey. I'm going to just stop rambling. It's so good. Let's wrap this video up. If you haven't already, please like the video, subscribe to the channel. Let me know what you think about this particular pour. Is it worth a secondary price tag, $250 to $300? Let me know what you think. I mean, this guy might end up paying that, unfortunately, because I really want one of these stinking bottles. Yeah, what else? Patreon. If you haven't checked out the Patreon, the link is in the description below. There's a tier for everybody, a lot of different things. You can help support the channel and get some exclusive access to behind-the-scenes content. I just got to get off here. I'm flustered. I'm going to cry. I'm emotional. This is such a freaking good whiskey. Cheers. I'll see you later here on Drums and Drams.